Today, the filmmaker James Cameron, who's given us so many oceanic worlds in movies, set out in a body-binding capsule alone. He did it. What did he see?
At 71, Hollywood legend James Cameron finally tells the world what he saw in the darkest place on Earth, the Mariana Trench. Back in 2012, the director of Titanic and Avatar risked his life to dive deeper than almost anyone before him.
We'll be at 18,000 feet here in a second. It's the depth Bud Brigman went to in the abyss. I'm doing it for real.
For years, he stayed silent. But now, before his time runs out, Cameron is breaking his silence about the shocking encounter he had at the ocean's bottom.
And this is what Cameron saw, a maritime moonscape. He thought he'd find life, but there was barely any.
Was it nature? Was it science? Or something far beyond what we can explain? Stick around as we reveal what James Cameron admitted about his dive into the abyss. The depths that called to him. James Cameron is more than just a Hollywood director. He's a dreamer, an explorer, and a man who never let limits hold him back. He created Titanic and Avatar, two of the biggest films in history. His movies didn't just entertain people, they changed the way films are made. Titanic won him the Academy Award for Best Director, and Avatar shattered box office records. Altogether, his films have earned over $8 billion, making him the second highest-earning director of all time. With that kind of money, you'd think he'd retire to a mansion, live in comfort, and enjoy the rewards of success. But James Cameron isn't wired that way. Instead of staying on the surface, he chose to dive deeper. From the very beginning, the ocean had called to him. As a boy in Canada, far from the sea, he spent hours glued to Jacques Cousteau's TV specials, watching the mysteries of the underwater world unfold. He devoured every National Geographic magazine he could get his hands on, filling his imagination with images of hidden worlds and deep-sea wonders. While other kids were playing ball, Cameron was building model submarines and rockets with his friends, experimenting with science and technology any way he could. For him, filmmaking and exploration were never separate. They were two sides of the same coin. His films told stories of adventure and discovery, while his personal life chased those very same frontiers. Cameron often said he saw himself not just as a director, but as an explorer. And when he finally had the money and resources to chase that dream, he did something most people would call insane. He poured his fortune not into yachts or luxury cars, but into building the most advanced deep-sea submersible ever designed, the Deep-Sea Challenger. The Deep-Sea Challenger looked like a tall, thin torpedo, 24 feet high but only 43 inches across. To make the dive, Cameron had to fold himself into a space even smaller than a phone booth. Inside that green and yellow capsule, he placed his life in its hands as it carried him down into the crushing darkness of the ocean's deepest point. In 2012, James Cameron took his one-man sub, the Deep-Sea Challenger, down to the Challenger Deep, the very bottom of the Mariana Trench, almost 7 miles below the surface. Down there, the pressure is so intense, it could crush a steel ball like paper. But Cameron's sub held firm. The Deep-Sea Challenger wasn't only built to survive, it was built to explore. Its body was made with special high-tech foam to help it rise back to the surface. It carried bright lights and 3D cameras to film the strange world below. It also had robotic arms and tools. With this dive, James Cameron became only the second person in history to reach the Challenger Deep and the very first to do it alone. It was a moment that mixed science, technology, and pure human courage. But why would a man who had already made history in Hollywood take such a dangerous risk? Why would he put everything on the line for a dive into the unknown? For James Cameron, the Deep-Sea Challenger dive wasn't just an adventure, it was the fulfillment of a childhood dream. In interviews, he described it as something he had imagined since he was a boy, watching Jacques Cousteau and reading National Geographic. Making blockbuster movies gave him fame and fortune, but this dive gave him something even greater: the chance to live out a passion that had been burning inside him for decades. He often compared the deep ocean to outer space, a vast, dark frontier that remains largely unexplored. To Cameron, the Mariana Trench was like another planet right here on Earth, a place where humans had barely scratched the surface. He believed that some of the greatest scientific discoveries could be waiting in those depths, from strange new life forms to insights about how our planet works. But the journey wasn't only about wonder. It was about preparation and precision. Cameron and his team spent years designing the Deep-Sea Challenger to handle every possible danger. Every piece of engineering, every safety feature was built to counter the crushing pressure and unpredictable conditions nearly 7 miles down. After returning from the ocean's floor, Cameron spoke about the need for more missions focused on science, not just spectacle. He wanted the world to see the ocean as more than a backdrop for movies, but as a living, breathing frontier of discovery. Years later, when the Ocean Gate Titan tragically imploded, Cameron explained why he had felt the disaster was coming. With his experience, he recognized the warning signs and knew how dangerous it could be to ignore the strict engineering rules that kept him safe during his own mission. For James Cameron, the dive was not just about achieving something for himself. It was a message to everyone that the secrets of the ocean are just as important as the mysteries of space. He believed that if we are ready to spend time and effort exploring the stars above, then we should also show the same passion for exploring the deep seas below. For this expedition to have happened, how much preparation went into making it possible? And why does Cameron believe the ocean still holds answers we desperately need? Preparing for the unknown. Before James Cameron ever set foot inside the Deep-Sea Challenger, he spent years preparing for the impossible. This wasn't just about building a machine. It was about surviving in a place where no human was ever meant to go. Cameron often said his sub had to be safer than an elevator. Unlike the Titan, which cut corners and ignored warnings, the Deep-Sea Challenger was engineered against nearly every risk anyone could imagine. Its design had to face crushing pressure, complete darkness, and the unknown dangers of the ocean floor. To do this, Cameron worked with some of the brightest minds in the world: engineers, scientists, and marine experts. Together, they created new technology that had never existed before. The sub's body used a special glass foam material that could bend under pressure instead of cracking apart. Powerful propellers were designed to move without stirring up the silt at the bottom, keeping his cameras clear. And for safety, the craft had multiple emergency buoyancy systems, from custom pontoons to weight-release mechanisms, each one ready to bring him back up even if the others failed. But it wasn't just about the sub. Cameron himself had to be ready. For months, he trained inside a life-size simulator, squeezing into the same cramped 12-cubic-foot sphere he'd be stuck in during the real dive. He practiced how to stay calm, how to move, and how to handle emergencies in the tiny space that would become his world for hours. Then, the test dives were 9 in total, each one going deeper than the last. The final test reached 5.1 miles down, proving the sub could handle the extreme environment. Cameron also learned from history. Back in the 60s, Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard became the first humans to reach the Challenger deep in a vessel called the Trieste. But their time at the bottom was short, just 20 minutes, and their view was clouded by stirred-up silt. Cameron wanted more. His mission was not just to touch the bottom and come back. He wanted to stay for hours, to collect samples, to film in high definition, and to truly explore the hidden world at Earth's deepest point. It was a massive effort, with teams across the globe working together. Australian engineers helped construct the sub's lower pod in Sydney. Scientific groups like National Geographic and the Scripps Institution of Oceanography partnered with him, turning his personal dream into a mission for discovery. Every bolt, every wire, every system was tested and retested, because one small mistake at that depth would mean instant death. This was not just another Hollywood project. It was a dangerous, historic expedition, one that only 2 men had attempted before him and none had done alone. James Cameron was prepared to risk it all, Not for money, not for fame, but for a dream that had lived in his heart for years. He wanted to explore one of the last great frontiers on Earth, the deepest point of the ocean. His mission was dangerous, filled with unknowns, yet he pushed forward. And while he reached the Challenger Deep successfully, what he discovered there wasn't just strange, it shocked the world. So, what exactly did Cameron see in the Mariana Trench? What secrets were hidden in those dark waters? And how did he get through the challenges of the deep water? Visions from the unseen. Far out in the western Pacific Ocean, just 200 miles southwest of Guam, something remarkable was about to happen. The ocean, calm on the surface, hid a secret below, an endless pit known as the Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth. And James Cameron? He was ready to combat the unknown. On March 26, 2012, at exactly 5:15 a.m. local time, Cameron climbed into the deep-sea Challenger, and it was his ticket to the very bottom of the world's ocean. His goal? To descend 7 miles straight down to a depth of 35,756 feet, farther than commercial planes soar above the Earth. As soon as the hatch sealed, there was no turning back. The submarine slipped beneath the waves, and within just a minute, the bright sunlight above began to vanish. By the time he reached 1,000 feet, James Cameron was in complete darkness. The descent wasn't quick. It took 2 hours and 36 minutes. That's longer than some feature films he had directed. Along the way, he passed familiar depth markers. At 2.9 miles down, he had already reached the depth where the famous battleship Bismarck lies. But he wasn't even halfway. By 5.5 miles, he was deeper than the height of Mount Everest. Still, there was more to go. The deeper he went, the more dangerous it became. The water pressure outside was 1,000 times greater than what we feel at sea level. The entire weight of the Earth was pressing Cameron. The metal walls of his capsule creaked and groaned, as if they might collapse at any moment. The temperature dropped to just above freezing. His only source of light was the glow from the lamps built into the submarine. Beyond that, endless blackness. And then the problems began. His batteries were draining faster than expected. His compass started failing. His sonar completely shut down. Even worse, he lost 2 of his 3 thrusters, leaving the sub sluggish and hard to steer. For most people, panic would have taken over. But Cameron stayed calm. He wasn't just riding along, he was piloting, monitoring dozens of systems, and troubleshooting in real time. Finally, after nearly 3 hours, the submarine reached the bottom, the Hadal Zone, almost 7 miles beneath the surface. James Cameron became the first human in over 50 years to reach the Challenger Deep, and only the 3rd person in history to ever do it. The moment Cameron touched down, he typed a short but powerful message to his crew waiting above. All systems okay. Down there, in a place where no sunlight can ever reach, Cameron's mission truly began. He wasn't there just for the thrill, he was there for discovery. With special cameras and tools, he documented everything, looking for signs of life, studying the alien landscape, and gathering data that scientists could use for years to come. It was more than exploration. It was a vision. The same vision that inspired his films Titanic and The Abyss. Stories about the mysteries of the deep was now guiding him in real life. In that icy, pitch-black silence, James Cameron showed the world that even in the harshest places on Earth, human curiosity can push beyond limits. He didn't just survive the journey, he reached the unthinkable. But what Cameron saw on the sea floor wasn't what anyone had imagined. Was the bottom of the ocean a barren wasteland, or did it hold hidden life waiting to be discovered? Let's find out. The world at the bottom of the Earth. When James Cameron finally touched down in Challenger Deep, the very bottom of the Mariana Trench, he entered a place that looked more like an alien world than our own planet. He described the sea floor as flat, soft, and almost gelatin-like, stretching endlessly in every direction. It wasn't colorful or full of strange creatures like people might imagine. Instead, it looked pale, empty, and eerily quiet. Cameron himself said it was the bleakest seafloor he had ever seen. At first glance, there were no fish swimming, no crawling crabs, not even the faintest sign of life. For a place scientists thought might be packed with strange new species, this was shocking. Was the deepest point on Earth really nothing more than a lifeless desert? Or was life there simply hiding in ways we couldn't yet see? Cameron didn't sit still in disappointment. Using the robotic arm on his green and yellow sub, the Deep-Sea Challenger, he began gathering sediment, rocks, and water samples. These tiny collections would later reveal something astonishing. More than 68 new species, most of them microbes, but also a few strange creatures like unusually large amphipods, some reaching nearly 8 inches long, when their cousins in shallower waters barely grow to 2 inches. Even more surprising, scientists suggested there could be new species of sea cucumbers lurking in those depths. Still, Cameron's first description left many questions. Why did the seafloor look so empty, almost like a desert at the bottom of the sea? Why was there such a lack of visible life when researchers expected to see far more? Marine biologists wondered if Cameron hadn't stayed long enough, or if his lights simply didn't reach the creatures that live there. But the mystery only deepened with his later interviews. Cameron admitted that he noticed unusual patterns in the sediment, markings that didn't look natural, almost like something had moved through the mud before he arrived. And then there was his equipment. His compass had glitched badly on the way down, but even after landing, it continued to give readings that made no sense. In an environment where pressure reached more than 16,000 pounds per square inch, and the temperature hovered just above freezing, this was more than unsettling. Cameron compared the seafloor to a lunar landscape. The pale sediment looked like snow, and the entire world felt more like the surface of the moon than Earth. He even described small hills and valleys carved into the seafloor, signs that geological activity still happens, even in this crushing darkness. Through it all, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a filmmaker chasing thrills. Cameron's mission was science. His cameras captured stunning high-definition 3D footage, and his samples helped scientists better understand a world few had ever dreamed of exploring. Yet even with all the discoveries, the microbes, the giant amphipods, the strange formations, Cameron's words left us with more mysteries than answers. Because it left some haunting questions, was the Challenger Deep really a barren wasteland? Or did Cameron see something he didn't fully reveal? What secrets lay in the samples found? The secrets discovered from the samples. When James Cameron returned to the surface after his historic dive, he didn't just come back with stories. He came back with something far more valuable: samples from the deepest part of our planet, Challenger Deep. These weren't just bits of mud and rock. They were treasures from an alien-like world, keys that could unlock the mystery of how life began, and maybe even how life could exist on other planets. For years, scientists carefully studied these samples, and what they found was shocking. At first, Cameron had described the bottom of the trench as barren, almost lifeless. But the truth turned out to be very different. Inside those samples were over 68 new species, most of them microbes, but also strange little invertebrates unlike anything we've seen before. Among the discoveries were microbial mats, thick, tangled clumps of microorganisms. Scientists believe these may be similar to the ancient life forms that first appeared billions of years ago, the very spark that began life on Earth. But that wasn't all. Researchers also found xenophyophores, bizarre giant amoeba-like creatures that live only in extreme places. These are single-celled organisms, but some of the largest cells ever discovered. And they were thriving nearly 7 miles beneath the ocean's surface, in pressure more than 1,000 times what we feel at sea level. The samples revealed a new kind of carbon food supply in the deep sea, something completely unexpected. It suggested that life in the trench wasn't just surviving, it had its own hidden energy system, its own way of feeding life at the very bottom of the Earth. Scientists believe these unique organisms could change everything. Some of the deep-sea microbes were producing chemicals that no one had ever seen before. These compounds could one day be used to create powerful new medicines, improve technology, or even help us understand how life might exist on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. If life can thrive in the crushing darkness of Challenger Deep, then maybe it can thrive far beyond Earth. But here's where the mystery deepens. For someone who usually loves to talk about his projects, Cameron has been surprisingly quiet about the full details of what was discovered. In interviews, when asked directly, he often shifts the conversation back to engineering or exploration. Some scientists who worked on the samples have hinted that the findings were so unusual, so hard to explain, that they had to be checked again and again before being released. Whispers began to spread. Some researchers claimed they found chemical signatures in the water that didn't match any known biological process. Others hinted at microscopic structures that didn't look like ordinary life forms. And the questions only grew when, years later, in 2025, Chinese researchers discovered entire colonies of worms and mollusks living nearly 10 kilometers below sea level in the Mariana Trench, the deepest community of creatures ever found. If life was thriving there, why didn't Cameron see more of it during his hours on the bottom? Did he miss it? Or did he see something he chose not to share? What we do know is this: Cameron's expedition was the first true scientific exploration of Challenger Deep using a manned submersible. And the samples he brought back have changed science forever. They showed us that life can thrive in places we once thought impossible. They revealed organisms that may hold the key to new medicines and technologies. And they proved that the deepest, darkest places on Earth may not be dead zones, but thriving ecosystems waiting to be discovered. Life exists in places we once thought impossible, completely dark, freezing cold, and under pressures strong enough to crush steel. And yet, not only does life survive there, it actually thrives. This fact alone forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about biology. But it raises a big question. How is this even possible? And what kind of technology allowed this expedition? The engineering behind the dive. The Deep-Sea Challenger was not just a submarine, it was a floating laboratory built for one purpose: to reach the deepest known place on Earth, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench. The sub was built in Sydney, Australia, by the Acheron Project team. Every detail had to be perfect, because at that depth, the pressure is unimaginable. So powerful it could crush a regular steel vehicle like an empty soda can. To survive, Cameron's capsule was designed with a sphere carved from a single piece of steel, with no welds or seams that might crack. The walls were made from a special type of syntactic foam, light yet strong, that could compress under pressure without shattering. But surviving the descent wasn't enough. The Deep-Sea Challenger had to be a scientific platform, able to explore, film, and collect data. Engineers packed it with 3D cameras that could shoot in total darkness, robotic arms to scoop up samples, and sensors to measure the deep ocean environment. The lights alone were a major breakthrough, powerful enough to cut through pitch-black water, but carefully balanced to avoid draining the limited battery supply. Communication was another hurdle. Normal radio waves don't travel through 7 miles of seawater. Instead, Cameron relied on acoustic signals, messages sent through sound waves. Even then, contact with the surface was shaky, and sometimes his team had no idea if he was safe. Perhaps the most impressive part? All this technology had to fit inside a space smaller than a phone booth. Cameron couldn't stand or stretch for the entire dive, which lasted nearly 7 hours. Some of the sub's technology remains a mystery. Certain systems have never been publicly explained, either because they involve military applications or because they're still considered proprietary. One thing is certain: this dive wasn't just about James Cameron chasing a personal dream. It was a milestone for science and engineering, proving how far human imagination and determination can push the limits. Humanity had reached the very bottom of the world, and that achievement was now written into history. But for Cameron, it didn't stop there. The journey only fueled his hunger to explore further. He wanted to go back, to uncover more secrets of the deep. The question is, did he ever return? Did he make more discoveries? Or was this just the beginning of an unfinished story? Future interest, the journey back to the deep. James Cameron's dive into the Mariana Trench wasn't the end of the story. In many ways, it was only the beginning. After his historic solo descent to the Challenger Deep, Cameron admitted that his work was not yet complete. Speaking with National Geographic and NBC News, he said that the dive felt like just the first chapter in a much larger mission. Why would he want to return? The reasons were clear. First, there was science. His first dive only scratched the surface of what could be studied in the trench. He had gathered samples, but he knew there were far more discoveries waiting to be made. New species, new microbial communities, even new geological features that might reshape how we understand the Earth itself. Then, there was the fact that the trench is massive. Cameron compared it to wandering through a wheat field for a mile and then claiming to have explored all of America. His point was simple: just touching the bottom wasn't enough. The Challenger Deep covers a vast, continental-sized area, and most of it is still completely unexplored. He wanted to map more, explore further, and push into places no human eye had ever seen. There was also technology. The Deep-Sea Challenger submersible had been groundbreaking, but Cameron knew it was only a first step. Returning would allow him to refine the technology, test stronger systems, and prepare the way for future explorers. But after his dive, something unexpected happened. Cameron's expedition sparked a new race to the bottom. For decades, the Mariana Trench had been a place of myth, visited only twice before. But suddenly, nations and private research groups realized the enormous potential hidden in those crushing depths. China, Japan, and the United States all announced ambitious plans to send their own submersibles. Why this sudden rush? Exploration was one reason, but there was also prestige and resources at stake. If life could thrive at the very bottom of the ocean, what else might exist there? Rare minerals? Unknown chemical compounds with commercial value? These questions fueled a modern deep-sea arms race. Still, very few missions matched Cameron's scope and ambition. Many used unmanned drones that could gather data, but they lacked the human presence that made Cameron's dive so immediate and personal. Even so, every expedition built on the door Cameron had opened. The trench was no longer unreachable. It was humanity's next great frontier. And in later interviews, he reminded other explorers of one simple fact: the Challenger Deep is a fixed point. You can't claim to go deeper than it by a different gauge reading. It's not a competition, it's a scientific truth. James Cameron's legacy is undeniable. His dive wasn't just about setting a record, it sparked a worldwide race to return to the abyss, a race that continues even today. But was this really Cameron's first expedition into the unknown? Had he never tested the deep waters before? Before the Challenger. Long before James Cameron made history with his solo dive into the Mariana Trench, he was already pushing the limits of exploration beneath the waves. His first major deep-sea adventure was connected to the making of his blockbuster film Titanic. In the mid-90s, Cameron made 12 dives to the actual wreck site of the Titanic in the North Atlantic. These dives weren't just about gathering footage for the film, they gave him valuable experience in the deep ocean and sparked his obsession with exploring places few humans had ever seen. During those Titanic dives, Cameron worked on creating new underwater filming systems and remotely operated vehicles. The technology he developed there became the foundation for his later expeditions. Without those early innovations, the Deep-Sea Challenger mission years later might never have been possible. But Cameron didn't stop with shipwrecks. He became an explorer in residence at National Geographic, and he worked with NASA to design advanced cameras for the Curiosity rover, the same rover that was sent to Mars. He even offered his expertise to the U.S. government during the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010, showing that his engineering skills extended far beyond filmmaking. By 2011, Cameron was recognized as more than a director. He was an engineer, inventor, and a true explorer. He joined the Deep Submersible Pilots Association and continued developing new tools for underwater science and filmmaking. These first steps prove that James Cameron's dive to Challenger Deep wasn't just a sudden idea or random dream. It was the result of many years filled with curiosity, creativity, and strong determination. From exploring the Titanic deep underwater to even working with NASA on Mars technology, Cameron was slowly preparing himself for one of the boldest solo missions ever attempted. And when he finally reached the bottom of the ocean, he claimed to have seen things that remain some of the ocean's biggest mysteries. Do you think Cameron might be keeping some of his discoveries secret? Could there be more he hasn't told the world yet? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.